yo, slave! You is free!
Massa, I is free.
From the battlefields of the courtroom, the Reconstruction era attempted to rebuild the South from the ashes of defeat. But due to racism and political drama, the Reconstruction failed to salvage any honor from the Southern antebellum. The South lay frozen in a perpetual state of despair and hopelessness, unable to progress and succeed along with the rest of the United States.
In 1863, President Lincoln was not aiming to begin specifically the Reconstruction. He really just wanted to find a way to end the Civil War and gain white support for emancipation. But he was a smart man. He knew that to reach his goals, he had to find a way to bring the defeated South states back into the Union.
Abraham Lincoln was a peaceful man. The Civil War had just ended, and he was not looking to begin more fighting with the South. Thus his goal became to accomplish unity in a non-violent way. Lincoln's plan for the Reconstruction began. Being the humanitarian that he wished to respect the private property of white Southerners willing to swear an oath of allegiance to the Union and its laws.
So basically the 10% plan said that when the number of any Confederate States voters who took the oath of allegiance reached 10% of the number that voted in the previous election in 1860, this state could establish a state government that Lincoln would recognize as legitimate. Really, this was just his way of luring the Southern states back in. He wanted to persuade the Southern states to unify with the Northern.
The Radical Republicans were the group of Republican congressmen, usually a substantial minority, who strongly desired to end slavery. These men had always believed in the emancipation of enslaved blacks, even since the beginning of the Civil War.
Although Lincoln's Reconstruction plan appeared able to unite America, his design angered the Radical Republicans.
Lincoln felt that the Wade-Davis bill threatened his plan to end the war and bring the Southern states into the Union. The stricter version of his 10% plan made it much harder for the Confederate states to join the Union. He believed the Radical Republicans were being too harsh.
It required 50% of a Confederate state's white male citizens to take the oath of allegiance to become part of the Union and reap the benefits of the national government. Additionally, it guaranteed equality to slaves. President Lincoln vetoed this bill immediately.
During these first few years of Lincoln's presidency, Union Army commanders occupying the South began confiscating plantations and employing African Americans. By 1864, over 40,000 African Americans were being paid by the government. In 1865, Union Army Commander General William T. Sherman designed the Special Field Order 15. He set aside abandoned land along the southern Atlantic coast for 40-acre grants to freed slaves and freed indentured servants.
Yes, I got me some land. Yes, I did.
Lincoln and the Union Army wanted to help the freedmen in the South. Slaves and indentured servants had no education or money just after their release. They weren't allowed to make any kind of life for themselves, and these 40-acre grants helped over 30,000 freed African Americans.
Conflicts within the Republican Party prohibited the development of an official plan to distribute land, but Lincoln and the Congress still sought a way to aid the emancipation of slaves. In March of 1865, Congress established the Freedmen's Bureau Agency.
My goal with the Freedmen's Bureau was to provide resources for former slaves and poor whites. I wanted to set up education systems, supply economic services, offer advice, and ensure their protection. By giving them food and clothing, I could help many poor former slaves and indentured servants get back on their feet.
Some white Freedmen Bureau agents, along with investors and businessmen, were known as carpetbaggers. Northern Republicans who moved to the South to make a gain from social and political problems of the Southern states, or to help by creating Northern institutions to help the area advance.
So, Mr. Johnson, unfortunately, our former president, Abraham Lincoln, has been killed. Now that you've become president, how do you plan to continue Lincoln's reforms and Reconstruction?
That's a great question. I definitely plan to continue giving rights to my fellow white Southerners who swore an oath of allegiance to the Union. And the Reconstruction should be solely my territory. I feel Congress has no right to nose around in that business. I also think President Lincoln may have been a bit strict when allowing Confederate states back into the Union, so I plan to be much more lenient.
Interesting. What about your plan for granting civil rights to former slaves?
Well, that's not part of the plan.
That Johnson thinks he can just strut around and let those blood-sucking Southerners back into our Union? No! He just goes off on his own and tries to take complete control. Who does he think he is? Forgiving Confederates for simply pledging loyal to the Union? Psh, anyone can do that. Now 10 out of those 11 Southern states are sitting on their high horse, thinking they're forgiven by us. No way can we let him make the call. If he thinks he can just walk all over us, he's got another thing coming.
By this time period, a richer class of American citizens had been established as a makeshift aristocracy. The rich became politicians, and the poor and the middle class just cast votes. Votes affected by their employers, of course. So when the Congressional Reconstruction era came, the rich and snobby started taking control of the government, totally going against all American ideals.
What's that, Zinn? You see subliminal conspiracies of the rich and the Wiggles. You are at best misguided and most likely delusional. The Republican era was a time of thriving American values. The common man elected their representatives who reflected their opinion in Washington.
Oh, that's rich coming from you. You're not a historian. You're just a walking propaganda for American history. American values died the minute the rich formed their political aristocracy. You know the Congressional Reconstruction era resulted in nothing good, except perhaps limiting the power of the executive.
Oh, you want to insult my historical work? All you do is find out dirty secrets and publish books, pretending to be so anti-war. How many people did you murder in the war, Zinn? You're oh so remorseful, but we all know you just say that for publicity.
Oh, this is on you, fraud. I bet you still believe Washington never lied and felt bad about our treaty.
Despite the freed status of blacks in the South, many southern states, including South Carolina, Mississippi, and Louisiana, passed laws that specifically limited the freedom and rights of blacks.
Be it enacted that it shall not be lawful for any freed man, free negro, or mulatto to intermarry with a white person. Any person who shall so intermarry shall be deemed guilty of felony, and on conviction thereof shall be confined in the state penitentiary for life.
Black codes, oh black codes, restricted colored men. Ex-slaves had basically no rights back then, controlling their labor, migration, and lives. These laws made it oh so hard just to survive.
Black codes, oh black codes, gave white men cheap labor. A black kid might work for free for his white neighbor. Racism from whites was the driving cause. Eventually, these led to the Jim Crow laws.
Blacks could not vote, most had no land. This made some Yankees mad. But black men got the vote in 1870. Then they did not feel